Alright, everybody, this is the History of Computers Part 3, the Hollerith tabulating system. All I need you to do for the warm-up here, instead of our normal discussion, jot some things down that you remember for Joseph Marie Jacquard and Charles Babbage. I look forward to reading them when you submit your work. Feel free to pause the video, jot down your thoughts, resume the video when you're ready. Herman Hollerith. He was born February 29th, 1860 in Buffalo, New York. He is regarded as the father of modern automatic computation. His parents were immigrants from Germany. He is said to have been a bright and able child with school or in school, but he had a really hard time with spelling. His determined teacher made his life miserable to the extent that he used to avoid school whenever possible. He would run away when his teachers tried to improve his spelling. Herman was eventually taken away from school, and he was tutored privately at home by the family's Lutheran minister. Hollister entered the City College of New York in 1875, and he became an engineering graduate of the Columbia School of Mines in 1879, graduating with honors. His undergraduate record had been outstanding, and one of his teachers, Professor W.P. Trowbridge, was so impressed that he actually asks Hollerith to become his personal assistant in the classroom. Just a little nod here to the great mustaches in American history, Herman Hollerith and Bill the Butcher from Gangs of New York. After graduating, Hollerith becomes an assistant to Trowbridge. First, he works at Columbia, but later, he joined the U.S. Census Bureau as a statistician when Trowbridge ends up being appointed as Chief Special Agent to the Census Bureau. This job was very significant because while solving the problems of analyzing the large amounts of data generated by the 1880 U.S. Census, Hollerith was led to look for ways to manipulate data. The idea, in fact, came from Dr. John Shaw Billings, who Hollerith came into contact with in his work for the U.S. Census Bureau. Hollerith wrote in a diary that Shaw told him there ought to be some way of doing this job mechanically, something on the principle of the Jacquard loom, whereby holes in a card regulate the pattern to be woven. So there you go. Again, more inventors, this time in America, being inspired by Jacquard and his development of the Jacquard loom. He also wrote, there ought to be a machine for doing the purely mechanical work of tabulating population and similar statistics. The United States Census Bureau is a principal agency of the U.S. federal statistics system, responsible for producing data about the American people and the economy. In 1882, Hollerith joins the Massachusetts Institute of Technology, known as MIT, where he taught mechanical engineering. At this time, he investigated Billings' suggestion, examining the ways that the Jacquard loom worked with a view to seeing if it could be used in census work. He found that in most respects, the function of the Jacquard loom was too far removed from what might be useful in the census work. However, he did realize that the punch cards were an efficient way to store information. Another idea struck him one day on a train as he watched the ticket collector punch tickets. This was an easy way to punch information onto cards. While he worked at the Massachusetts Institute of Technology, MIT, Hollerith began his first experiments. These used paper tape rather than cards, with pins which would go through a hole in the tape and complete an electrical contact. So these experiments are now being powered by electricity. The idea was nearly right, but the tape had drawbacks since it had time to stop to allow the pin to go through the hole to make contact. Hollerith realizes that cards would provide a better solution. Hollerith did not enjoy teaching, so he soon sought another job. In 1884, he obtains a job in the U.S. Patent Office in Washington, D.C. Now, for an inventor, this seems like the ideal place to be. This was either very good luck or a brilliant career move, depending on how farsighted Hollerith was in seeing that he would be in the best possible position to make full use of skills learnt in the patent office to patent his own inventions. In 1884, Hollerith applies for his first patent. He would receive more than 30 different patents from the U.S. during his career and also sought many overseas. He developed the early work he had done at MIT on methods to convert information on punch cards into electrical impulses. These impulses in turn would activate mechanical counters. He first used the punch that was used for tickets on the railway to make the holes in the cards. This showed that the system worked, but since the punch could only make holes near the edge of the card, the full potential was not being used. So, with this device here, right, you were only able to punch holes around the perimeter. It would not reach the middle in this section. So he needed to come up with a new tool. Hollerith designs a brand new punch, as seen in the top right corner here. He also improves the machines which read the cards. Engineering developments improve the accuracy of the pin going through the hole to make that electrical connection to trigger the counter. The resulting electrical current activated the counter and the amount of information which could be handled on each card. Hollerith's system was first tested on tabulating mortality statistics in New Jersey, also in New York City. So they're testing these tabulating machines on the death rates of New York City. That's a lot of pressure because a lot of people live in New York City, so they're really going to test the strength of this new system. The punch card system was in use by the time of the 1890 census, but it was not the only system to be considered. He had a rival, we can say. However, Hollerith's machine won convincingly in competition with two other systems considered for the 1890 census. This showed that it could handle data more quickly than its competition. Having won, Hollerith now had to have punches and counting devices manufactured. The punches were made by Pratt and Whitney, later famed for building engines for aircrafts. The punch was constructed in a similar way to a typewriter, having a simple keyboard. The counting machines were made by the Western Electric Company. Everything was in place by June of 1890, and the first data from the census arrived in September of that year. They had taken about 3 months to process, instead of the expected time of 2 years if counting was done by hand. So his machine sped up a 2-year process, shrinking that time frame all the way down to 3 months. The total population of the United States in 1890 was found to be 62,622,250 people. Here is the Hollerith tabulator and keyboard. The Hollerith system was clearly a great leap forward. It saved the United States $5 million that year. The system was again used for the 1891 census, but not just in the United States, in Canada, Norway, and Austria. Later again used for the 1911 United Kingdom census. He was awarded the prestigious Elliott Crescent Medal by the Franklin Institute of Philadelphia in 1890. He received the gold medal of the Paris Exposition and the bronze medal of the World's Fair in 1893. He was asked to address learned societies around the world, and he was invited to speak to the Royal Statistical Society in London. In 1896, Hollerith founded the tabulating machine company to exploit his inventions. By this time, he had added a mechanism to feed the cards automatically. Other automatic sorting procedures which added sophistication to the original simple mechanical counting process. His system was used again for the U.S. Census of 1900, but by this time he was asking such a high price for the use of his technology that questions began to be asked about the wisdom of using his system. Hollerith had a monopoly he had set the price well beyond what it would have cost to count the 1900 census data by hand. So he knows he has a stronghold on these governments now because his system works so efficiently. So of course he's going to raise the asking price of his services. The government ultimately decides to hire one of Hollerith's rivals, James Powers. The government strangely allowed Powers to create and patent machines that would rival Hollerith's, even though Hollerith already had patents on these designs. Maybe they were trying to save money. Hollerith's company was second best to Powers until Hollerith retired in 1921. However, Hollerith's prodigy, Thomas J. Watson, brought the company back into the spotlight and later renamed the company International Business Machines Corporation, or IBM. Hollerith ends up dying of a heart attack in 1929, 8 years after his retirement. Again, feel free, print the packet, fill in the red words. If you don't have a packet, or you don't have a printer, I should say, feel free to write me a summary of this lesson